Do you ever feel stuck or totally uninspired when you go to create content, or maybe you're writing a blog post, a social media post? If so, I feel you. I really feel you on this. I mean, I wrote an entire book, and I swear I get the worst writer's block when it comes to writing like a 2-sentence Instagram caption. So today, I'm going to share with you something that has really changed my life. I'm going to talk about how you can actually get in the habit of feeling more inspired. And the way that I'm going to talk about this is by starting a daily writing practice. If you follow me on social media, you've seen I've been sharing a little bit more about my daily writing practice, and I'm going to talk a lot more about that in this episode. But it has seriously been a game changer over the past few months. It has not only led to the inspiration behind podcast episodes or social media posts, but it's even created space for new creativity that led to new business ideas or passion projects that I want to start. It opened up the floodgates. So if you're feeling stuck, or you have been in the past, maybe you just need a jolt of fresh inspiration, then this episode is definitely for you. Welcome back to the show. I am going to give you a little inside peek at something that I've been sharing on social media, and it's one of those things that, do you ever share stuff and you're kind of amazed by what people pick up on, or what kind of starts to become this theme, or what people resonate with? Well, this is one for me. I'm going to kind of like share the backstory and then give you the breakdown. So many of you had questions about this daily writing practice that I've been sharing about. And it all really started with when I was writing my first book. So I was writing it back in 2016. And I remember saying yes to that project and being totally overwhelmed. I mean, I remember the editor that I was working with and the publisher saying that, a typical book is about 50,000 words, and that 1,000 words was like 2.5, typed pages, double space. And I just thought to myself, like, I don't think I ever wrote even like a college term paper that was more than 10 pages. Like, you're telling me I'm going to write now like 200 of them? Yeah, right. But she broke it down in a way that made it feel so manageable. And she said, those 2.5 typed pages, like if you just did that, once, I forget what it was. It was like if you write for, 5 days a week, and then however many weeks, it was like 10 weeks or whatever, you would essentially write a whole book. And I was like, man, okay, that sounds really easy. But then I started actually writing. And I would sit down. I remember I'd sit down at my computer and just feel like literally nothing came out. No words. I mean, sometimes I would have like ideas for a chapter, but then I would start to write it, and it was like complete writer's block. And like I shared in the intro, I still get writer's block when I try to write like a damn Instagram caption. So this was no surprise to me that I just felt like the words just wouldn't come. And I was part of this group of other aspiring authors. So luckily, I had a lot of support around actually pushing through. And one of the practices, I don't remember who shared it, but this changed the game for me. And this woman said, there's actually this quote, and I had to look it up. There were a couple of different people who were given credit for it, but the one I found most was William Faulkner. So I don't actually know if he was the one who said it, but whoever said this, their ideas were brilliant. And the quote is, "I only write when inspiration strikes. Fortunately, it strikes at 9 a.m. every morning." Now, what the backstory behind this is that, this writer had a daily practice of sitting down at a particular time and writing. And that was radical to me because I was always waiting for inspiration to strike, and then I would take action on it. But truthfully, that came if I'm lucky, I have one day out of each month that I'm like, the ideas are just flowing. And every other day, life is busy, or my schedule just doesn't really allow much creative space where I don't have an email to write or something to respond to or a meeting I need to get to. I wasn't clearing any space to allow creative ideas to come through. And so the practice that within this writing group someone shared was sitting down, and it was such a manageable amount of time. They said sit down for 15 minutes every single day and just write. Get in the habit of sitting down at the same time every day, or at least just making sure you have 15 minutes set aside every day to just write. And it really helped me to start to create that habit of sitting down to write whether or not I felt like it, whether or not I felt inspired. And what it started to do is it started to actually create the habit of feeling inspired. And it wasn't like every day that I would sit down, the words would flow. Some days, those 15 minutes felt excruciating. I would have barely a sentence, or I would just have basically reread something I had already written and just basically made tweaks to it. That was like all I accomplished. Other days, and this was really cool, because a lot of times it would start out where I wasn't really that motivated, but then I would kind of just like get into this groove, and before I knew it, I would write for an hour, and I would have, a whole chapter written. But I never knew which day the faucet of inspiration was going to turn on. I had to just sit down and do it and trust that, some days were going to feel easier than others. And ultimately, if I just got in the habit and sat down and was diligent and committed to writing every day, eventually it would end up in an entire book. And obviously, spoiler alert, the book is out there. So that, it ultimately did get finished. But what happened was, this was like the biggest undertaking I had ever done. And I, quite honestly, I gave up on that writing practice as soon as the book was finished. I had kind of like needed a break from writing. So it was earlier this year, actually just a few months ago, it was this summer, and I was part of a business mastermind. You guys have heard me talk about it before. And one of the exercises that we do at the end of our mastermind weekend is we sit down and we make a list of things I will stop doing, like unproductive things that, okay, I'm going to stop doing these, and things I will start doing. And for some reason that day, what popped into my mind was, gosh, I felt really creative and I felt inspired more often when I would sit down and write every day. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to bring this practice back to my life. And I don't know what had me share it, but I sat down and that first day I shared on social media, hey, I'm recommitting to this daily writing practice. And I was really just sharing to hold myself accountable. And then so many people started tagging me that they were taking on the challenge of daily writing as well. And they were asking questions. And I was so surprised by this. But it honestly does hold me more accountable seeing that you guys are taking this up too. But it had me realize, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about this, because the truth is that bringing it back and not even having like a specific end goal like I did last time, where I was sitting down to write a book. Just writing for the sake of writing has been it's just been like such a spark of inspiration. I actually started doing this leading into the Powerhouse Women event when I was creating content. I was obviously still trying to post on social media and do emails and, just like let the community know I was thinking of them. But I don't know about you, like sometimes my days just get so carried away with other things I need to take care of that even just posting on social media or, showing up for people in a different way wasn't happening. And I wanted to make time for it. So what I started doing was just getting up a tiny bit earlier, and I would write first thing in the morning. So I'm going to share my flow of like what the practice I've created for myself and just a little bit of kind of why that works for me. You can, of course, map this onto your own life and see what feels good for you. But then I'm also going to dive in to a couple of questions that people have asked. I kept a list of the questions people have been asking, and I'll answer those too, just in case you've been wondering the same thing, or if you're thinking of trying this for yourself. But this is kind of what I've found works best for me, and it makes it feel not overwhelming. Because the first thing you should know is that this should not feel stressful. This should not feel at all like just another thing on your to-do list. It should feel like the opportunity to tap in to the inspiration, the creativity that is really there. It's just waiting for you to clear some space for it to come to the surface. So first thing I do, you guys have heard me talk about this before, the whole idea of creating before I consume content. So this is the hardest for me, I'll be honest. The first thing I want to do when I wake up is log onto social media or check my email. Like, the temptation is real. That's why I have to write first thing in the morning, and I'll even like put my phone across the room, plug it into a charger, across the room, so I'm not tempted to just pick it up. But the other thing that I do is I log out of my email and social media like the night before. So before I go to bed, I even have like on my iPhone, it basically gives me a curfew. It like tells me when it's time to shut down. And then I log out of all Facebook, Instagram, and I log out of my email. Meaning that if I were to just like mindlessly pick up my phone and click on the Instagram app, it requires another step before I log in. And that is enough to make me just kind of go, oh, wait, that's right. I'm not going to log in until I've done like my daily writing. And then what it allows me to do is first thing in the morning, before I even log in and check any of those, what I'm essentially doing is I'm giving time for my own thoughts to take center stage and my own inspiration to come to the surface before I start inviting other people's thoughts in. Because if you think about it, when we log into social media and we see other people's stories or their posts, if we go in our inboxes, that's all other people's agenda. They want us to feel a certain way or they want us to do something. Nothing wrong with that. A lot of it is, for good. But I find that my brain too easily gets distracted, so I need to create before I consume. And it just helps me to create boundaries and not be pulled into all of the things fighting for our attention in today's world. Phone calls, texts, email, social media, you name it. So number one for me, I do it first thing in the morning. That's just what works. I feel really creative in the morning. I have some coffee or, whatever I'm going to have, and then I just create this little ritual with it. And then the second thing is I legit just hold myself to 15 minutes. Sometimes I go longer, but somehow just telling myself like, okay, look, you can do this for 15 minutes. If I can mindlessly scroll on social media for 15 minutes, I for sure can I actually do it on my computer. I can sit in front of my computer and I can just free write for 15 minutes. So sometimes at the end of that time, I barely write a paragraph. Sometimes I get really into a groove and like I said, I'll write for longer, but somehow giving myself just that specific block of time and very short block of time makes it feel like there's no pressure. Like, okay, cool. All I have to do is write for 15 minutes. Great. Then it just helps me get going and not think about like what my goal is by the end of that 15 minutes. And there's no pressure to continue going beyond that. So those are like, just for me, it's really simple. First thing in the morning, it's just 15 minutes. I log out of everything else so there's no distractions. And sometimes I will actually set a timer. Sometimes I just kind of like notice on my computer what time it is. And I'm like, okay, cool. It's 7:45. I'm going to write until 8 a.m. And then sometimes I surprise myself and go longer. So here are some of the questions. As I've been sharing about this on social media, I seriously just am loving so much that so many of you are jumping into this challenge too. But a lot of you have had questions, and these are probably the exact same questions I would have if I were seeing someone else do this. So I think a lot of you are really interested in the idea that this could spark some new inspiration, but all of these questions I think are going to give you so much freedom just to jump in. So someone asked, do I have a goal of what the writing should cover? And this actually is it almost kind of goes into the second one too, which is what do you actually write about? Like what actually helps you start writing? What do you write about? And like, do you have a goal of what the writing is supposed to be? So for me, again, this is just knowing myself and knowing that I tend to be very type A. I would love to have a plan. I would love to have like a syllabus for exactly what I should write. So instead, I try to keep it really free from expectations. Meaning, some days I'll just sit down and I'll literally like a question will pop into my head or a specific conversation I had the day before, and I'll just start writing about that. Or maybe it's like, hey, I've really been struggling with this lately. I wonder if anyone else is struggling with it too. A lot of times I'm just pulling inspiration from my own life, from conversations that I've had. Obviously, like a lot of the content I'm creating is for other women who have big ideas or who want to start businesses of their own. So I'll stop and I'll think back to what is a theme that I'm seeing show up among women in my life. What is a question I've been asked more times than I can count in the last week? I mean, hello, why do you think this podcast episode was, or what do you think it was inspired by? By so many of you asking the question about the daily writing. So if we pause long enough, again, instead of consuming other people's content, we pause long enough to notice people in your community, people around you are asking you questions all the time. They're picking up on cues from your life all the time. It could literally inspire an endless stream of content. But I think for so many of us, we're not clearing space. I know I wasn't clearing space to sit down and just kind of do a brain dump of all of that. So again, for me, what works is to keep this writing time free from expectations because those tend to stifle my creativity. And then as far as what I write about, I have some really great prompts that I'm going to share. I'm also going to link them in the show notes so you can just, if you want to see them in writing, I'll put them there. So I do have certain prompts that I'll go to that just help me to start the flow of writing. And then sometimes I'll get on one subject and I'll like absolutely pivot and start writing about something else if it, sometimes just the act of writing opens up other ideas that I wasn't planning to write about, but they, if I feel really inspired to write on a specific topic, I'll just go with it. I mean, you guys should see the Google Doc where I write a lot of these things in. It is like it's just like such a jumble of different topics, different like, ooh, this could be a social media caption, or what about this for, a podcast title? It's just a random mix of things. But then what I'll do, and this is actually the next question, how do you prioritize your ideas? What I do is I have this one document where I do a huge just brain dump. That is like my catch-all. It's like the junk drawer of my writing. I do like to write on my computer. Now, that can be tricky because obviously notifications, text messages come up on your computer as well. So I just try to be mindful of eliminating distractions, not having 1,000 browser tabs open. But I just do once in a while just a big brain dump of topics. I'll also continue to add to it, like throughout the day. If another topic pops into my mind, I can just quick hop on there. I have the app so I write in a Google Doc, and then I also have the Google Docs app on my phone. So even if I'm out and about and I think about something that could make a good topic to write about, I'll just, log into the app, add it to my list, and then I'll circle back to it later. So I have sort of like the junk drawer, the catch-all document that just has a bunch of random topics. Some of them I'll never write about, but if it crossed my mind, I'll put it on that document. And then what I do day to day is I'll really just, first of all, get quiet for a little while. Like I have a whole practice around, my morning routine that sets me up to just have a really clean slate as far as my mindset. And then I just kind of like notice what is really calling to me today. What do I feel most inspired to write about today? And then I pick what I'm going to write about from there. And then the last question was, does it have to be handwritten on paper? I already shared. I like to write on my computer. I can just write faster. It allows me then to reorganize my thoughts. So, in terms of if I end up writing a paragraph, I can take, copy paste a part of it and add it to a podcast episode. I can put another part of it in like my social media file. So for me, it just allows me to be a little bit more organized. Again, I'm like totally showing my type A to you right now. I mean, you should see like the organization in my Google Drive. It's impressive. I'm just going to say that. So you don't have to handwrite on paper, but if that works better for you, then absolutely do that. If I know a lot of people who have a journaling practice that they find that's the way that they feel most inspired. So do what works for you. But those are some of the things that have really helped me. And those are the biggest questions that I did, that I got when I started sharing about this. So the last thing is a couple of prompts to get you started. So now that you know, there literally does not need to be any expectations around this. You can literally find 15 minutes anywhere in your day. I recommend first thing in the morning, but do you? Then from that point, I think if you just have a couple of prompts to get you started, and again, I'll link these in the show notes too, so you have them, then I think this will seem less daunting to just jump in and give it a try. So here's just like, I made a little list of some of my favorite questions or prompts to help me start writing and, see which one resonates with you. So one of them, this is probably one of the biggest one of the biggest places that I find inspiration is just what is the most interesting conversation I've had in the past week. Another one, what question have I been asked multiple times over the past few weeks or the past month, or what theme do I notice showing up with people in my life? What Instagram post or story was I surprised that people seem to really resonate with? What other details can I share about that topic? So much like this podcast episode, you guys really resonated on social media when I was sharing about daily writing. You had great questions. Boom, it inspired a whole episode. So I can share more with you on the podcast, or you could think about this on a blog, than I could on one caption. Just a couple more. What have I felt challenged by lately that others might relate to? What is inspiring me right now? What's something that I love to teach others? And then a couple just last ones that are another great source of inspiration. Think back to a great podcast episode that you heard recently and then just summarize. What are the top 2 or 3 things you took away from it? But summarize it in your own words. Like, how would you paraphrase that? What did you learn from it? How are you applying it? Like right there, that could be inspiration for days. That could be a great Instagram post. And then when in doubt, this is probably my favorite, and we've talked about this topic at events or I know we did it on one podcast in the past, which is my favorite, unicorn brainstorming, right? So unicorn brainstorming is just the simple act of sitting down with a piece of paper and asking yourself, wouldn't it be cool if? So if you feel really stuck, just start to get super creative and playful with it. Unicorn brainstorming is all about there are no ideas, no answers that could possibly be too far-fetched or too crazy. It's just all in the realm of fun and play and coming up with some seriously crazy ideas. So those are my favorites. Those, I don't know how many we have here, 7, 8, 9, 10. Those are my go-tos, and I've never been at a loss of what to write about when I use those prompts. So here's the deal. I have a challenge for you. That is right, because this podcast is all about getting into action. So my challenge is I want you to try this for 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks is enough time to start really getting yourself into the groove. You don't have to do it every day. If you want to do Monday through Friday, again, there are no expectations around this. You decide what that 2 weeks looks like for you. And then I want you to post about it. I want you to post to create accountability. You can absolutely tag me. Of course, I would love to see who is all taking me up on this challenge because it helps keep me accountable. When I know that those of you who also are doing this are writing, if I didn't write that day, heck yes, you better believe that I'm going to find time to write if it didn't happen in the morning. So I think what will really help you, pick a time every day that you're going to write. Turn your phone on airplane mode or log out of your app so you don't get distracted. And then if you need to, just even set a timer for 15 minutes. It's not a lot of time. I think you'll be surprised by what can happen in that amount of time. And then I just want you to pick one of the prompts from the list and just start writing. You can use a pen and paper, use your computer, whatever works for you. Just start writing and try it. Because again, if you are going to get into action around your ideas, you're going to need to clear space for inspiration and creativity and for your own ideas to come through. So I can't wait to hear how this impacts your life, your passion project, your vision, and the new ideas that come through. Because I know for me, I've been really surprised by the magic that this daily writing practice has brought into my life. And I want the same for you too. So keep me posted. I will be holding you accountable, and I can't wait to hear more.